You know how every suburban family in the 80s wanted that perfect split-level house with the master bedroom on one side and the kids' rooms on the other? Well, boat builders figured out how to make that exact same thing float. They called it the aft cabin motor yacht, and for about 30 years it was the undisputed king of American marinas. Today, good luck finding a new one. They've gone the way of waterbeds and conversation pits. But this isn't just another story about some nautical fad. The aft cabin cruiser fundamentally changed how Americans thought about boats, transforming them from weekend toys into legitimate floating homes. And then, just as dramatically, the whole thing collapsed. So what happened? How did we go from a design so popular that it dominated entire marinas to something that builders won't even touch anymore? Welcome to the wild ride through the rise and fall of the floating condo. An aft cabin motor yacht is exactly what it sounds like. Someone decided to cram a complete master bedroom suite at the very back of the boat, under the rear deck. But here's the genius part. They also kept a cabin up front. So now you've got two separate bedrooms, one forward, one aft, with the living room and kitchen in between. On many 37 to 42 footers, you'd get two complete staterooms and often two heads. It was architectural origami, and somehow it worked. The revolution really started in 1962 when Hatteras Yachts introduced the world's first production fiberglass motor yacht, a 41-foot double-cabin cruiser. This wasn't just another boat, it was a game changer. Fiberglass construction made these complex layouts possible and affordable. By 1971, Hatteras launched their 53-foot motor yacht, and here's how successful it was. They built over 600 of them through 1989. Marine surveyor David Pascoe called it the most successful medium-sized motor yacht ever built. That's not hyperbole. That's market domination. But the real explosion came from Taiwan. In the mid-1970s, a New Jersey entrepreneur named Don Miller started Marine Trading International and began importing these 34-foot trawlers designed by naval architect Ed Monk. Teak interiors, parquet floors, full instrumentation. These weren't boats, they were floating apartments. And the price? About what you'd pay for a loaded station wagon. Miller's company alone imported over 3,000 of these trawlers in the following decade. Suddenly, every yard in Taiwan was cranking out aft cabin cruisers under dozens of brand names. Marine Trader, CHB, Island Gypsy, Albin for Americans who couldn't get enough of them. The timing was perfect. The 1970s fuel crisis had everyone panicking about gas prices, and these trawler-style aft cabin boats were incredibly efficient. A typical 36-foot trawler with its single 120 horsepower Ford Lehman diesel would burn maybe 2-3 gallons per hour at 7-8 knots. That's about 2-3 nautical miles per gallon. Meanwhile, similar-sized twin-engine planing cruisers of the era often struggled to break 1 nautical mile per gallon at cruise, burning many times more fuel at speed. During the fuel crisis years, that efficiency wasn't just nice to have, it was essential. But it wasn't just about fuel economy. These boats solved a fundamental problem. How do you make a 40-foot boat feel like a house? The answer was brilliant. Parents got their private master suite in the back with their own bathroom. Kids or guests got the forward cabin, often with another bathroom. Everyone met in the middle for meals in a proper salon with a full galley. And here's something that sounds impossible, but it's true. Some of these boats had bathtubs, actual bathtubs. The Monk 36 trawler, another Ed Monk design, came with a tub in the masterhead on older models. Owners of 1980s carvers bragged about their masterheads with large showers with bathtubs and even bidets. In a 40-foot boat, it was residential luxury on the water. The marketing people stopped calling them boats altogether. These were floating condos, and honestly, they weren't wrong. Dock parties became legendary. The aft deck was basically an elevated patio perfect for entertaining. The flybridge, that upper helm station above the main cabin, became the spot for sunset cocktails. Marina neighbors weren't just slip renters, they were your floating subdivision. By the 1980s, everybody wanted in. Carver, Silverton, Chris-Craft, Sea Ray. Every American manufacturer had multiple aft cabin models. You could get them from 32 feet to 55 feet, from bare-bones budget models to floating palaces. The Taiwanese imports kept coming too, though they earned nicknames like Taiwan Tupperware from the snobbier crowd. Quality issues aside, they delivered big boat living at small boat prices. And people weren't just using these for weekend trips. The Great Loop, that 6,000-mile cruise around the eastern United States, became the retirement dream of every office worker in America. The demographics of loopers skews heavily toward retirees, and these aft cabin trawlers were perfect, comfortable for months of travel, economical to run, and with the right draft for inland waterways. Couples would sell the house, buy a 42-foot aft cabin trawler, and spend years cruising. Snowbirds would motor down the intracoastal waterway every winter. The boats truly functioned as floating condos, and that's exactly what people wanted. The heyday was something to behold. By the early 1990s, walk through any American marina and half the boats had that distinctive wedding cake profile. A boxy aft deck stacked on top of a broad stern, with another level for the flybridge. They weren't pretty, but man, were they practical. Then came the 2000s and everything changed. The new generation of boaters made a shocking discovery. They actually wanted to use the outdoors. The fatal flaw of the aft cabin design suddenly became obvious. By putting a bedroom at the back, you basically eliminated the cockpit. Your only outdoor space was the flybridge where you'd fry in the sun, or that tiny aft deck perched above the bedroom like a landlocked balcony. Meanwhile, these sleek new express cruisers started showing up. Low profiles, huge sun pads, wide open cockpits with swim platforms. They looked fast just sitting still. The aft cabin boats, they looked like your dad's RV had fallen into the water. Speed became everything. New engine technology meant boats could cruise at 25, 30, even 40 knots. The old trawler mentality of slow and steady seemed antiquated when you could get to your destination in a third of the time. Builders did the math and didn't like what they saw. Fitting out an aft cabin properly, with 2 complete staterooms, 2 heads, all that extra cabinetry and systems, cost serious money. They could build a simpler express cruiser for less, sell it for the same price, and pocket the difference. Plus, new designs like the midship master stateroom gave buyers that full-beam luxury cabin without sacrificing outdoor space. Even traditional builders like Fleming Yachts now offer a full-beam midships master option on models like the Fleming 65. The exodus was swift and total. Sea Ray's last aft cabin models disappeared in the early 2000s. Carver's classic aft cabin era largely wound down in the mid-2000s. Silverton continued their big aft cabin motor yachts into the early 2000s, and the company's operations ceased entirely in 2012. As Power and Motor Yacht bluntly put it, there just aren't many liveaboard 40-footers being built anymore. Twin inboard aft cabin cruisers from the 1970s and 80s just aren't in demand in today's market. By 2010, major American production had completely ceased. The design that had ruled American boating for 3 decades was officially dead. But here's the thing about boats. They last forever if you take care of them. Drive through any marina today and you'll still spot them, usually with for sale signs and prices that'll make you question reality. A 40-foot yacht for 20 grand? The catch? It's from 1987, it burns fuel just thinking about moving. And finding parts is like an archaeological expedition. Yet people still buy them. There's a devoted community keeping these floating condos alive. And surprisingly, these old boats are finding new life as ideal looper boats, perfect for retirees finally taking that great loop adventure. They may be 30 to 50 years old, but for slow, comfortable cruising, they're unbeatable. The design hasn't completely died everywhere. In Europe, companies like Broom Boats in the UK continued building aft cabin cruisers into the 2010s. Their last new model, the Broom 430, debuted in 2014, though they ceased new production in 2018. On European canals, where bridges are low and speed limits are walking pace, the aft cabin layout still makes sense. Even serious ocean-crossing brands maintain the tradition in spirit. Cody Krogan has built over 600 trawler yachts in their 45-year history, and Nordhaven continues building expedition trawlers from 41 to over 100 feet. While their pilot house designs differ from the old sundeck aft cabins, they serve the same purpose: comfortable, long-range cruising for people who measure journeys in months, not hours. There's something poignant about the fall of the aft cabin yacht. It represented an era when boating meant slowing down, when the journey mattered more than the destination. These weren't boats for showing off at the sandbar or pulling wakeboarders. They were boats for living, for exploring, for taking your time. The modern boat market wants speed, style, and Instagram-worthy entertainment spaces. The aft cabin offered none of that. What it did offer was a 2-bedroom apartment that could take you anywhere there was water at a walking pace, while sipping fuel like a Prius. Will they make a comeback? In the mainstream, probably not. But every time someone discovers you can buy a floating 2-bedroom condo for less than a new pickup truck, every time a couple dreams of endless cruising and retirement, every time diesel prices spike and slow starts looking smart again, the aft cabin dream refuses to die. Those boxy old cruisers tucked away in marinas aren't just outdated boats. They're monuments to a different philosophy of boating, when Americans decided that if you're going to own a boat, you might as well be able to live in it comfortably, with 2 bathrooms, and maybe even a bathtub. The aft cabin motor yacht conquered American boating by being exactly what people wanted, a house that floats. It fell from grace by being exactly what people no longer want, a house that floats. Sometimes the very thing that makes you successful becomes the thing that makes you obsolete. But for those who remember the heyday, or those discovering these bargain floating condos for the first time, the appeal remains unchanged. After all, where else can you get 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, and an ocean view that changes every day?